Welcome to Marketing 247, Consumer Behavior Online, offered by Harper College, Illinois, Palatine, Illinois. My name is Dr. George Mochocki. Before I go into what's required for the week, let's just do a little housekeeping. So some of you may not watch the whole YouTube. I don't know why, but some of you may not. It's a lot of information that'll kind of help you to do well. So housekeeping. Make sure you always log in into every week. Week 1 and 2 will be turned off going forward. Your weekly assignment is what you have for this week. If you don't complete it by Saturday midnight or Sunday Saturday midnight, it's turned off, and then you've lost the points for that week, and you just go on for the next week. Some of you have come in later into the class. You still do very well. You still get the B and A out of the class. You didn't lose too many points. 50 out of I think 800 or whatever I have. You still do pretty good, but you have to be diligent in going forward. Okay, so you've got the forms. This week I've done something else. I've added two different components. You have the concept maps that are always in there, but I've added links into your module. And then also I created another link that's learning objectives. Some students may want to see not only the real quick learning objectives that I have in my concept maps, but a full detail. What are we supposed to learn, or what tasks should I be looking at before I start reading the book. So you're going to have the overview, the printout, and then you're going to have another section that has the learning objectives per chapter. So you can print those out. And then remember, you always have the student's PowerPoint. Look at the student PowerPoints. When you go into student PowerPoints, you click open up into PowerPoint. Go into slide presentations, click on there, and you can go through that way, because you have YouTube, you have some videos that are embedded into the presentation. How you have to get them, you have to be within the, what do you call it, you have to have it open up in the PowerPoint slide presentation. So you've got the PowerPoints, you got the maps, you got the overview, you've got this YouTube. We should be all right. So what is expected out of you this week? Okay, this week we're going to be covering 2 chapters. So and you're also going to have 2 forums. Now, this week is worth 55 points. You're going to have the quizzes. Again, one quiz covering chapters 5 and 6. And so when you go into clicking the quizzes, that should be the last thing you do after you do the forums, to do the reading, the objectives and concept maps. You click on the quiz, and the quizzes are chapter 5 got 10 questions. Chapter 6 has 10 questions. They're in order. You have more than enough time to complete the quizzes at that time. You have this live YouTube. You're all right. Let's see. I've created a homework assignment that you'll be submitting to me, and we've talked a little bit about that. You should be okay. This chapter is chapter 5. So what I want you to do now is look at your concept map. And remember, the concept map I have in a PDF file. I know there's a lot of information. Sometimes some people say, I'm a little older, I'm having trouble reading your concept map. When you click on a PDF file, you could magnify that, and you could see it in better detail. So when I'm looking at this week, what are we going to talk about? It's an extension from last week. It's looking at the subcultures. So what are the subcultures? Remember, last week we looked at generation and everything else. Within the major cultures, there are subcultures. And this one we'll be looking at the ethnic subcultures. So chapter 5 looks at African Americans, Hispanic, Asian Americans, Native Americans, Asian Indian Americans, and Arab Americans. And then we look at the buying power for each. And if you're looking at the buying power for his, let's call it African American. There's $9.10 billion. That's a lot of money from a consumer behavior for $9.10 billion for different markets. I have to make sure I understand this market. It's a very good market. Okay, the younger adults, they may not have as much education, or let's see, less education maybe than the Asians, but that's okay. But what you'll find out from the reading of this chapter and some of the sites that I have open for you is that 1/3 of black households earn $50,000 more. So it's tied up. The more education the black community, African American community, or the black community, you gotta be careful, because a lot of people that are from Jamaica, and they may not associate themselves as African American because they're from different cultures, different ethnic background. So when I look at the black community, the more education they have, the higher their income. The higher the income, and that's why we're all in college. The higher the income, the better it's. The more purchasing power, the more they have disposable income that I'll be able to tap in. And it's a different market. Whether I have a college education or whether I have a high school education, and that means the same for all of the different ethnic subcultures. You know, Hispanics, the Asians, the Americans, the Native Americans. All those are subcultures within, and all those are generations within from a consumer. To see how detailed you have to be to really understand your customer market. Now, when you look at the Hispanic market, the one thing I want to look at the Hispanic market, and they kind of broke it down, is basically Hispanics are 66, Mexicans are 66% of the market, Cubans 4%, Puerto Ricans 9%, Latinos another 14%. But what I wanted you to look is a different generation. The first generation, 60%. That means they're still they were born outside the United States, just like I was first generation, born from outside the United States coming in. I know certain different authors will have different generation. I want you to look at it from a consumer perspective. I'm looking a little different than if you were taking a what do you call it, a social science class or something, a demographic class or a global class specifically on generations, and they'll go through it. Okay, so when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at this from consumer, from a marketing perspective, what we consider first generation. Okay, now second generation means that now it's my son that's born here, even though I'm the first, so he would be considered second, born to immigrant families. You know, they're bilingual, they have higher income, higher education, and 60% of them of this generation identify themselves as Hispanic. Now, the third generation is now I'm basically been born here, so I'm a second generation, and my kids from a second generation are born here. They're more of a U.S. They may relate more to as American versus than they would to a Hispanic, but this generation is multicultural because they go with the different generations. You know, the younger generation, the father, the grandfathers, and other extended family generations. Okay, demographics within that subculture. Okay, then you look at the Asians, and the Asians, when you look at the Asian market, you look at the Chinese, Filipino, Vietnamese, Koreans, Japanese, and others. And now, if some people say, why aren't people from India considered an Asian? Because they're in the same hemisphere. We consider them separate because there's such a large population. There's another billion plus, just like you do with Chinese, Asian, 1 billion plus, and now you have Indians, another billion. So they, well, for lack of better words, they're so large, they'll constitute Asian Indian Americans. And I look at their buying power, you know, and so let's jump onto them. What you're going to find out is similar to European and American. They basically have high education. It's there's I would look at them for second generation, they basically emphasize that their children and their offsprings or everything else is basically education very strong, okay? And then you have Arab Americans. I'm looking at the Arab American. Interesting fact about Arab Americans is that 66% of American Arab Americans identify themselves as Christians, and 80% are U.S.-born citizens. And see, there's a stereotype that we always figured that all Arab Americans may be outside of the United States coming in, and that's a fallacy. From a marketing perspective, I have to understand. So, how do I market to the majority of Arab Americans? I don't have to do anything special. They are basically in the mainstream. They are already looking at the regular communication. They, what do you call it? Relate to Americans, and you know, so they're not anything different. And this is something that we'll learn from the reading. Remember, as new marketers and new individuals understanding consumer behavior, a lot of times we have our own stereotypes because we come into this, and now that we are exposed to different things, we go, hey, there's a lot going on. Oh, that's wrong. So now I understand how to market to them, and right. And then you have the religious subcultures. Remember, you have the Christians, and then the Christians, you have the way this author broke it down. You have the, what do you call it? The born again Christians. You have the Protestants, and then you have, for lack of better words, the Roman Catholics. And then you have the non-Christians. All of these are subgroups of a larger group, and I can market specifically to those groups. Or if I'm marketing, I have to consider: am I offending any one of these groups within the marketing my marketing campaign? Okay, so that'll take care of chapter 5. Now chapter 6. Now this one's chapter 6 is where you're going to do your written assignment. And this chapter 6 in the forum is also going to, your written assignment is going to come off of chapter 6. Your forum is going to be based strictly on chapter 6. Now, what's chapter 6 about? Chapter 6 is basically looking at how do I market to the younger generation. So I'm looking at marketing to households, to families. So what's the typical household? It's a culture all by itself. What's the nature of the household? What's the traditional households? The author broke it down. What's the step family households? What are multi-generational families? Now, after I take all this and understand the households, because a household, if you look at the households, the way a household buys is similar to what an organization would buy. If I look at the consumer, I teach a course at the same time online as organizational behavior. And I think the last time when I ended up my YouTube, I said organizational behavior instead of consumer behavior. No different. If I look at the family is similar to organizational behavior. You have different initiators, you have different buying power, you have different buying centers within that family. The children will basically go to the parent, hey, Dad, Mom, I want this, or could you buy this? And who's the purchasing? Who controls the finances? Who controls the money? And remember, when you look at the family, it's going to be very interesting by the different generations, different ethnic cultures, whether Hispanic or Asian, who actually controls the dollars. Basically, most of the Americans, if I look at typical American family, it's the woman basically that has the control of all the money. If I look at the Indian, American Indians population, India people, not the native Indians, but people from India, it's the husband still controls the money and makes the major purchasing decision. So, and that's just a cultural generation. But eventually, if I'm looking, do you see how the subcultural versus a major culture, depending on who I'm selling and who's predominantly buying my products, and I can identify that. And now I know this is the consumer, and I'm specifically marketing towards that consumer, or in my total integrated marketing plan, I am also looking at how to market that subculture or try not to upset a subculture. Okay, so we have that. The biggest thing I want to do is now you look at household life cycles. If I look at household life cycles, you look at single, young with couples, full next generation, single parent, middle-aged parent, single parent, a second level, delayed full nester, empty nester, empty nester, and older single. Now the other thing is I'm looking at the strategy is how do families purchase items. What are some deterrents for family? So when I'm targeting strictly to family, remember, we're not the traditional family anymore, which you'll find out in this chapter. We are a variety of families, different families. So, and the traditional family is still a large proportion, but that number is dwelling. So now, for marketing or consumer, I have to understand where you fall in, what kind of family, because you have different needs and different ways, different decisions. You purchase things differently. Okay, so you have a different purchasing behavior than a traditional family. And all traditional families aren't traditional, depends on the ethnic and the Hispanic, the Asian, American, European. So all those combined. Now, if you are right now going, oh my God, my head is spinning. How does a marketer do it? There's software that basically tracks all this. If you look at the book that you purchased, a brand new book, there's a DVD in there. I haven't really been heavy on the math and looking, but look at the DVD, and if you're looking for your papers or anything else, there is so much information on different families. It's set up in an Excel spreadsheet. Now there's software that is compiling all this, and you have all that in your fingerprint. So load the DVD and look at that. Look at how they market to kids. Look at what age and how much and a percentage. And now you can see why do marketers want to understand how children and adults or families purchase. Now, a process of consumer socialization we have in there. Content of what do you call it? Now, this chapter now is children. The biggest thing on the forum is at what age do I start marketing to children? If you look, there's a lot of websites. You have Disney, you have Nickelodeon. I have a grandson that watches a lot of this. And in between, even if you're watching, let's see, Blue Clues, or if you're watching Sesame Streets, they throw in marketing. They throw in, hey, ask your mom. Or is it subtle that they see them playing with this thing, or you see Big Bird saying, hey, I'm going to be on TV, send something in. Is that indirectly marketing to children? At what age? If you look at the what do you call it? The different models and different stages that the children learns. If Peggett's stage of cognitive development, at what age is it fair game to market? No, look, I'm not teaching consumer. I'm teaching from a marketing perspective, from a business perspective. I want to understand. I understand kids like things. I understand that parents buy. The parents, remember, and here's the ethical question. From your intro to business other class, what's ethics? Ethics is above and beyond the law. So a lot of things that marketers do, it's legal, minimum legality. But is it above and beyond its ethic? Is it ethical? Now, they may not violate anything, but is it ethical from a marketing perspective? So if I look at the forum is basically looking, and the write-up is looking at it. I've selected some websites, and I wanted you to look at from an ethical background. At what age should I market? Even though I know there's some marketing going on, at what age? Even remember, because once you're a teenager, you have the disposable income, you have the car, or a certain age when you get a young adult. Okay, it's fair game. But should I be marketing? Should I be promoting advertising and putting things, abilities? You remember, if you look at some of the advertising, here's some of the ethical issues. If I look at what do children believe, is there too much violence? Remember, kids look at a lot of things as role models. Now, should we be marketing, advertising directly to children under 6 years old? I think that's what the forum's at. And remember, it's an interesting forum. Look at some of the websites and see, are they marketing? Have they pushed the envelopes, or shouldn't it? And this is one. Look, I don't want for marketing. Some people say I don't see no issues. They could be marketed. It's harmless. Others have not. Remember, from a business perspective, I try to find that balance. I don't want to upset anyone. I want to make sure I'm marketing because my competition is marketing, but at what level should I be more ethical in marketing? So I think it's going to be an interesting forum. So that's basically our the chapters 5 and 6. One's looking at families, and structures. The other one is a continuation of subgroups. So we're doing pretty good. Real interesting chapters. Look at the PowerPoints, look at the videos that are embedded in PowerPoints when you hit the slide things. Look at the forums, look at the homeworks, look at the discussions. Remember, we're doing very well in discussions. Do your posts. This book is excellent reading. This is a newer version. I know it's a little pricey, but some people bought the ebook, some rented the book, but it is very current and it is very easy reading, and it makes you start wondering. Most of you, even if you're not going to be a marketing major, think about how they're a consumer. Think what's going on if you're going to have kids, and if it's right or wrong. Okay, so again, this is Marketing 247 online, offered by Harper College. My name is Dr. George Mochocki. Make sure you go into week 3 forum. Week 1 and 2 is already turned off. Going forward, the forums are turned on. Even if you want some of the information, just click on the grades. And even though you may not be able to access this way, you always get access through your grade book. We're doing very well. This is a nice size group. Your interaction, enjoy. Going forward, I may not be able to talk all the time. I'm always reading the forums. I want you to start communicating. Look at me as your supervisor, or your boss, or your customer, looking outside, looking in to see how you're doing. I will always put my input in so you know I'm in there, and at the end, I'll grade through the rubric. So I'm enjoying it. You guys and gals, you are very good in this class. I could just see the forums are very at a college level, timely, professional. Some are a little straggling along, but look, you already have 3 weeks ahead of you, or 2 or 3 weeks already behind you. You should do well. Okay, so my name is Dr. George Mochocki. This is Marketing 247 online, consumer behavior, offered by Harper College, Palatine, Illinois, utilizing Blackboard course management system, and I'll see you in the forum in a second.